William Bramley. Tension. Organizations and corporations. Most Avon Books paperbacks are available at special quantity discounts for bulk purchases for sales promotions, premiums, or fundraising. For information, please call or write. Special Markets Department, HarperCollins. Publishers Inc. 10, East 53rd Street, New York, New York, 10022, 5299. Telephone, 212-207-7528. Fax, 212-207-7222. Avon Books, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers, to all of those who have spent long and unthanked hours in pursuit of the truth, whoever they may be. And my thanks, of course, to Elizabeth. Avon Books, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers, 10 East 53rd Street, New York, New York. 10022, 5299. Copyright 1989, 1990 by the Darlin Family Press Contents. Published by arrangement with the Darlin Family Press Library of Congress, Catalog Card Number 891148. ISBN 0380718773. All rights reserved, which includes the right to reproduce this book or portions thereof in any form whatsoever, except as provided by the one. The search begins. 1. U.S. Copyright Law. For information address Avon Books. 2. Orientation 5. 3. UFOs. Truth or Fiction. 10. The Darlin Family Press Edition contains the following library of 4. The Gods of Eden, 36. Congress Cataloging and Publication Data, Bramley, William the Gods 5. Brotherhood of the Snake, 53. Of Eden, 6. The Pyramid, Builders, 57. Includes Index, 7. Jehovah, 73. 1. World History, 2. Unidentified Flying Objects, 8. Melchizedek's Apron, 89. 3. Bramley, William. Title, 9 Gods and Aryans, 94. D24, 5. B73, 1989, 909, 89, 1148, 10. The Maverick Religions, 103, 11. Doom, Prophets, 111. First Avon Books Printing, March 1993, 12. The Jesus Ministry, 120, 13. Apocalypse of John, 135. Avon Trademark Reg US Patoff, and in other countries, Marca 14, The Plagues of Justinian, 144. Registrada, Hecho en USA, 15. Mohammed, 151. HarperCollins Registered Trademark is a trademark of HarperCollins Publishers, Inc., 16. Messiahs and Means, 168, 17. Flying Gods Over America, 172. Printed in the USA, 18. The Black Death, 179, 19. Luther and the Rose, 196. WCD 109, 20. A New Aristocracy, 209. 21. Funny Money, 213. If you purchase this book without a cover, you should be aware that 22. Marching Saints, 221. This book is stolen property. It was reported as unsold and destroyed. 23. William and Mary Have a War, 227. To the publisher, and neither the author nor the publisher has received any payment for this stripped book. Via William Bramley, 24. Nights, New Dawn, 233. 25. The King Rats, 244. 26. The Count of Saint Germain, 259. 27. Here a Night, There a Night, 271. 28. American Phoenix, 275. 29. The World of Fire, 294. 30. Master Smith and the Angel, 302. 1. 31. Apocalypse Ovia Marks, 323, 32. Funny Money Goes International, 328, 33. The Wool Workers, Paradise, 335. The Search Begins, 34. Robo Sapiens, 351, 35. Saint Germain Returns, 364, 36. Universe of Stone, 375, 37. Modern. Ezekiel's, 393, 38. The New Eden, 397, 39. Escape from Eden, 431, 40. The Nature of a Supreme Being, 435, 41. To the Researcher, 444. Invitation, 454. Notes, 455. When I first began researching the origins of human bibliography, 467. Warfare, certainly the furthest thing from my mind, were index. 483. Unidentified flying objects, better known as UFOs. The many flying saucer magazines which once graced the newsstands were, in my opinion, not worthy of serious consideration. I also did not feel that the UFO phenomenon was terribly important, even if it was evidence of an extraterrestrial race. Solving the down-to-earth problems of war and human suffering seemed so much more important than arguing over whether or not little green men from Mars might occasionally be visiting Earth. I began researching this book in 1979. However, my desire to see an end to war arose much earlier in life, at just about the age of 8. Back then, war movies were. Asterisk. A recent exception is UFO Magazine, which I recommend. It is presently published in Los Angeles, California, by Vicky Cooper and Sherry Stark. 1. 2. William Bramley. The Gods of Eden. 3. Very popular in my circle of friends. Our favorite game, I began this study as the result of a single idea I had, was playing Army. I usually commanded one squad of Encountered. The concept is certainly not a new one, and Kids and my friend David led the opposition. We filled our, at first it seems, narrow in scope. The idea is nevertheless imaginary battles with the same glamour and altruism we saw quite important because it addresses a motivation which can on television. We had no greater hero than the late actor Vic, only be formulated by creatures of high intelligence. Morrow, who would gallantly lead his army squad to victory war, can be its own valuable commodity. Every week on the television series, Combat. The simple existence of violent conflict between groups of one Saturday afternoon I was watching a Hollywood war people can, in itself, be valuable to someone regardless of the movie on television. It was like any other war movie except issues over which people are fighting. An obvious example that it contained a short piece of numbing realism. For the is an armaments manufacturer selling military hardware to first time in my life, I found myself looking at documentary warring nations, or a lending institution making loans to film footage of an actual Nazi concentration camp. Long governments during wartime. Both can achieve an economic, after the images vanished off the television screen, I was benefit from the mere existence of war as long as the violence haunted by the pictures of skeleton-like bodies being thrown does not directly touch them into large pits. Like so many other people, I had trouble. The value of war as a commodity extends well beyond fathoming the souls of the Nazis who could shove human monetary gain. Beings into brick ovens like loaves of bread, and moments war can be an effective tool for maintaining social and later pulled out the charred remains. Within a minute, those political control over a large population. Grainy black and white images presented a true picture of, in the 16th century, Italy consisted of numerous war. Behind the curt salutes and stirring oratory, war is little independent principalities which were often at war with but a degraded psychosis. while war movies and games can one another. When a prince conquered a neighboring sometimes be fun, the real thing is unconscionable. City, he would sometimes breed internal conflicts among, for centuries, scientists and thinkers have attempted the vanquished citizens. This was an effective way to solve the riddle of why people go to war. They maintain political control over the people because they have observed that nearly all of Earth's creatures fight endless squabbling, prevented the vanquished people from among themselves at one time or another, usually over engaging in unified action against the conqueror. It did food, territory, or mating. Aggression seems to be a not greatly matter over what issues the people bickered, so universal behavior related to survival. Other factors also, long as they valiantly struggled against one another and not contribute to the creation of wars. The analyst must take against the conquering prince into consideration such variables as human psychology. A state of war can also be used to encourage population sociology, political leadership, economic conditions, and to think in ways that they would not otherwise do, and the natural surroundings. Many thinkers, however, have to accept the formation of institutions that they would erroneously equated all human motives with motives found normally reject the longer a nation involves itself in the animal kingdom. This is a mistake because intelligence wars, the more entrenched those institutions and ways of breeds complexity. As creatures rise in intelligence, then thinking will become. Motivations tend to become more elaborate. It is easy to most comprehensive history books contain brief understand the mental stimuli in two alley cats squabbling answers to this type of manipulative third-party activity. It is over a scrap of food, but it would be a mistake to attribute no secret, for example, that prior to the American Revolution, as simple a state of mind to a terrorist planting a bomb in France had sent intelligence agents to America to stir up an airport. Colonial discontent against the British Crown, it is also known as 4WWILLIAMBRAMLEY secret that the German military had aided Lenin and the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution of 1917. Throughout all of history, people and nations have benefited from and have contributed to the existence of other people's conflicts. Intrigued by these concepts, I resolved to do a study to determine just how important the third-party factor has been in human history. I wanted to discover what common threads, if any, may have existed between various third-party influences in history. It was my hope that this study would offer added insights into how and by whom history orientation has been made. What resulted from this modest goal was one of the most extraordinary odysseys I have ever taken. The trail of investigation wove through a complex labyrinth of remarkable facts, startling theories, and everything in between. As I dug ever deeper, a common thread did emerge. To my chagrin, it was a thread so bizarre that on at least 2 occasions I terminated my research in disgust. As I pondered my predicament, I realized something important. Rational minds tend to seek rational causes to explain husband to wife. Look at this, honey. It says here human problems, that the Earth travels 595 million miles around. As I probed deeper, however, I was compelled to face the sun every year at a speed of 66,000 miles per hour. Possibility that some human problems may be rooted in some at the same time, the Earth is rotating around of the most utterly bizarre realities imaginable, because such center of the galaxy. The galaxy is traveling endlessly, realities are rarely acknowledged, let alone understood, they through space, and is pulling the Earth along with it, are not dealt with. As a result, the problems those realities. Now, how can you say we never go anywhere? Generate are rarely resolved, and so the world seems to stumble from one calamity to the next. Hello and welcome. This is our planet Earth. Before I will admit that when I began my research I had a starting our journey through history, let us take a brief look bias about what I was expecting to find. A human prophet at our little space orb from the vantage point of newcomer's motive as the common thread which links various third undergoing a brief orientation. Party influences in mankind's violent history. What I found. Spaceship Earth, as some people like to call it, instead was the UFO. Relatively small celestial body, the American space shuttle, nothing could have been more unwelcome. Can completely orbit the Earth in only 90 minutes. In modern aircraft, the crossing of once formidable oceans has become little more than a dull routine for many an airborne business person plying his or her trade between continents by merely picking up a telephone and dialing 5, 6. WILLIAMBRAMLEY, the gods of Eden. 7. One can speak instantly to someone on the opposite side of Ago, became hopelessly bemuddled by countless false ideas. The globe. We are all witnesses to the remarkable manner, strange mystical beliefs and practices, incomprehensible, in which high-speed travel and telecommunications make symbolism and erroneous scientific teachings. As a result, contact between distant points on Earth quickly and easily, the subject of the spirit, is today almost unstudyable, on top manageable. Of that, many scholars trained in Western scientific meth Earth is not only small, it is also quite remote. If you and OD reject the idea of a soul entirely, apparently because I were to take a position outside of the Milky Way galaxy, they cannot put a spirit under a microscope and watch it, we would see that Earth is near the galaxy's outer edge. Squiggle or plant electrodes in it and give it a jolt. Addition, the Milky Way is dwarfed by much larger galaxies, good fortune would have it, some breakthroughs on axes. This isolated location might help explain why Earth the subject have been made within recent decades. Evi has so few contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations, if such dense that every person is a unique spiritual being, is strong civilizations exist. Earth is afloat in the distant boondocks indeed. Volumes of fascinating testimony have been garth of a minor galaxy, arid from people who have undergone so-called near-death. Despite its isolation, Earth is pretty, and it is inhabited. Experiences. During such episodes, many people undergo, as of this writing, the human population numbers over 5, the sensation of leaving their bodies, especially as there billion people. Add to that figure all of the other large bodies approached death. Some psychiatrists argue that this mammals, and we find that the lands and waters of Earth phenomenon is nothing more than a self-protective illusion, are occupied by an enormous population of intelligent and of the mind. It is not as simple as that, many near-death semi-intelligent creatures. Victims are able to perceive their bodies from an ACU. What kind of animals are human beings? As a student of rate exterior perspective, they retain their complete self-biology can quickly tell you humans constitute that animal awareness and personal identity, even though their body species known as Homo sapiens. The work homo comes are unconscious, from the Latin word for man, and sapiens means being. In light of such testimony, it is not surprising that a few wise or sensible. The label Homo sapiens therefore denotes religions, such as Buddhism, believe that people are immora creature possessed of wisdom or sensibility. Most homotile spiritual beings, which become enmeshed in bodies der sapiens, do live up to their title by and large, although a ing life. Buddhists conclude that this is caused, at least in small number, obviously do not. Part By the spirit's long-term interaction with the physical when dealing with a human being, are we only con-universe? In sharp contrast to psychiatric theory, Buddhists fronting an animal? As it turns out, we are not. It appears teach that spiritual separation from the body is the healthiest, that we are faced with something much more important, a state for human beings, and Buddhists seek to attain that spiritual being. Separation without suffering physical trauma or death. The idea that there is a spiritual reality to life is ageless. Some religions have held the belief for millennia that human bodies are mere puppets, animated by spiritual beings. Often accompanying this tenet are doctrines concerning reincarnation. Asterisk a short but interesting article entitled A Typology of Near-Death Nation, or An Afterlife. In the Christian religion, the word experiences by Dr. Bruce Grayson is found in the August 1985 issue of the American Journal of Psychiatry. Dr. Grayson presents a statistical. Soul has long been used to denote a spiritual entity which breakdown of the different types of near-death phenomena and notes survives the death of the physical body. Individuals reporting these three types of near-death experiences did not, some people claim, that an ancient wisdom about the spire differ significantly on demographic variables. P. 968. Dr. Grayson did it had once existed. If such a wisdom ever did exist, it long not speculate as to what causes the experiences. 8. WWILLIAMBRAMLEY. The Gods of Eden. 9. Goal is encouraged by the belief that a spiritual being can intention to obfuscate, have clouded the field with false, operate a body as well, or better, from outside a body as reports, untenable explanations, and fraudulent evidence. From within. Suffice it to say that behind this smokescreen there is ample the definition of a spiritual being, shared by several rely evidence of extraterrestrial visitations to Earth. This is to Gions appears to be the most accurate one, a spiritual being bad. An in-depth study of the UFO phenomenon reveals that is an entity possessed of awareness, creativity, and person. It does not offer a happy little romp through the titillating ality. It is not composed of matter or of any other compo unknown. The UFO appears more and more to be one of Nent of the physical universe. It appears instead to be and the grimmest realities ever confronted by the human race. Immortal unit of awareness which cannot perish, although keeping the points of our brief orientation in mind, let us it can become entrapped by physical matter. The spiritual now begin a deeper probe. Being is fully capable of understanding itself. The modern trend, of course, is to view the brain as the center of awareness and personality. Scientists have been able to electrically stimulate specific parts of the brain to produce the physiological manifestations of many human emotions. This, however, reveals the brain to be nothing more than a sophisticated switchboard capable of being activated by a variety of external sources, such as by an experimenter with his electrodes, or even perhaps by a spiritual being with its own energy output. The interaction between a spiritual entity and the body's central nervous system appears to be so intimate that a change in one can often influence the behavior of the other. From all of this emerges a picture indicating that human beings are spiritual entities who enjoy a certain spiritual immortality, but who are usually unaware of it until an unexpected separation occurs. During life, spiritual beings tend to utilize almost exclusively the perceptions of the physical body. Death, according to this analysis, is little more than spiritual abandonment of the body during a time of intense physical or sometimes even mental injury. What does all of this have to do with human warfare? almost everything, as we shall see. That brings us to the third and final topic of our orientation, UFOs. There are few subjects today as full of false information, deceit, and madness as flying saucers. Many earnest people who attempt to study the subject are driven around in circles by a terrific amount of dishonesty from a small number of people who, for the sake of a fleeting moment of notoriety or with the deliberate. The gods of Eden. 11. Accurate term, because not all unidentified flying objects are saucer-shaped. Hundreds of UFOs are reported every year, usually to police, to the news media, or to UFO research groups. These reports represent only a minority of the total number of UFOs actually seen, because most UFO witnesses do not publicly reveal their encounters. Roughly 90% to 95% of all reported UFOs prove to be man-made aircraft or unrecognized natural phenomena. Approximately 1.5% to 2% are outright hoaxes, often UFOs. Truth or accompanied by spurious photographs. Although hoaxes constitute such a small percentage of all UFO reports, they have created a disproportionate amount of trouble. Hoaxes are in fact responsible for almost entirely disgracing the serious study of UFOs. The more convincing the fraud, the more damage it will usually do. The remaining 3% to 8.5% of all UFO sightings are those which appear to be aircraft of non-human origin. Most researchers are concerned with this last group. 20th century UFOs were rarely reported in the mass UFOs media before 1947, and so some people assume that UFOs are they? Where do they come from? Strictly speaking, the term unidentified flying object must be a relatively modern phenomenon. UFOs are, in fact, UFO refers to any aerial object which cannot be quite the opposite. UFOs have been reported for thousands, tively identified as a man-made construction or as any of years in all parts of the world. For example, writer Julius' known phenomenon of nature. The term implies a mystery. Obsequens reproduced the following account from 216 BC. In common parlance, UFO is often used to denote any, in his book, Prodigorium Liber, object which might be a spacecraft from an extraterrestrial civilization. Things like ships were seen in the sky over Italy. The phrase unidentified flying object was coined by U.S. at Arpi in Italy. A round shield was seen in the Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. Captain Ruppelt led sky. At Capua, the sky was all on fire, and won an Air Force investigation into the phenomenon in 1951. Saw figures like ships, L. Prior to Ruppelt's investigation, UFOs were usually called flying saucers because many eyewitnesses described in the 1st century AD, famed Roman statesman Cicero objects as disc-shaped. Flying saucer quickly became a recorded a night, during which the sun, accompanied by term of derision, however, due to the skepticism expressed loud noises, was reportedly seen in the night sky. The by many newspaper and magazine writers, unidentified sky appeared to split open and reveal strange spheres. Flying object was used by Captain Ruppelt to lend his air UFOs became so troublesome in the 8th and 9th Sen Force study an air of respectability. UFO is also a mortuaries that Emperor Charlemagne of France was compelled to issue edicts forbidding them from perturbing the air, and 10. Provoking storms. In one episode, some of Charlemagne's. 12. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 13. Subjects were taken up in aerial ships, shown marvels, centuries before the Scandinavian Vikings or Christopher, and then returned to Earth, only to be put to death by an Columbus. Some scholars conclude that the Phoenicians had angry mob. Those troublesome ships were even accused of borrowed many features of the Egyptian civilization and had destroying crops, transplanted them to the New World. Another hypothesis is UFOs have not only been seen, they have also been that the ancient Egyptians themselves had sailed across the worshipped throughout history. The religions of ancient ocean, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Americas were dominated, despite evidence to support all of the above possibilities, by the adoration of human-like gods from the heavens. None of the theories fully encompass all of the known. Many of those gods were said to travel about in flying facts. This has led to a fourth theory, well expressed in boats and globes. Ancient claims of that kind are today, 1910, by Oxford professor and Nobel laureate Frederick, the basis of the modern ancient astronauts theory, which Soddy postulates that a space-age race had once visited Earth and had involved itself in human affairs. Some of the beliefs and legends bequeathed to us by researchers have gone a step further by suggesting that antiquity are so universally and firmly established, such a space-age race had either created or conquered, that we have become accustomed to consider them human society many thousands of years ago, and that it as being almost as ancient as humanity itself. Never has been maintaining a watchful eye on its possession, the less we are tempted to inquire how far the fact ever since. That some of these beliefs and legends have so many to many, such theories seem to be the stuff of psi features in common, is due to chance, and whether the ence fiction. The ideas are, however, one outgrowth of similarity between them, may not point to the existence and academic debate which has preoccupied historians of an ancient, totally unknown and unsuspected civili over a century. How did the ancient Old and New Worldization, of which all other traces have disappeared? 2. Civilizations, located on opposites of the earth, come to so closely resemble one another. Why did the peoples, when such conjecture is raised, many people think of Vanov, those far-flung civilizations, develop such remarkably ished land masses or islands, such as the legendary lost con-similar religious beliefs? Tenets of Atlantis and Lemuria. One of Professor Soddy's widely held view is that a land or ice bridge, once contemporaries, however, took a different approach and spanned the Bering Strait between Siberia and Alaska, over-speculated that extraterrestrial societies were involved in which people from the Old World had migrated into the Earth's prehistory. Dr. Soddy's controversial contemporary knew. Others point to archaeological evidence that was Charles Hoy Fort, 1867 to 1923. Ancient Phoenicians had sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. Charles Fort is perhaps the earliest writer of the 20th century to seriously suggest that extraterrestrials have been involved in human affairs. Fort supported himself on a small inheritance and spent many years of his adult. Asterisk. A long and interesting collection of ancient UFO sightings and unusual life-amassing reports of unusual phenomena from natural phenomena from the late BC and early AD years can be found scientific journals, newspapers, and magazines. The stories he and Harold T. Wilkins's book, Flying Saucers on the Attack. Despite its collected were of such events as unusual moving lights, sensationalistic title, Mr. Wilkins's book is often well argued and is worth in the sky, rainfalls of animals, and other occurrences reading as one of the earliest books of the modern UFO era. An excellent collection of ancient UFO reports can also be found in Jacques Vallée's, which seem to defy conventional scientific explanation. Passport to Magonia. His first two books, The Book of the Damned, 1919, and 14. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 15. New Lands, 1923, contain a large assortment of UFO. Bellwethers to the rest of us, or as superior slaves or sightings and related phenomena from the 19th and early overseers, directing us in accordance with instructions 20th centuries. Fort concluded that Earth skies were received from somewhere else, in our mysterious hosting an array of extraterrestrial aircraft which he called usefulness. 5. Superconstructions. Fort developed other theories from his research. Several Fort did not speculate as to what mankind's mysterious of which have endured and still remain provocative today. Usefulness might be, except to briefly suggest that humans, in the Book of the Damned, he wrote, might be slaves. In a lighter vein, Fort thought that Earth had had a very, I think, we're property, lively and colourful prehistory. I should say we belong to something. That once upon a time, this Earth was no man's land. But I accept that in the past, before proprietorship, that other worlds explored and colonized here, and was established, inhabitants of a host of other worlds fought among themselves for possession, but that now have dropped here, hopped here, wafted, sailed. It's owned by something, flown, motored, walked here for all I know, been that something owns this earth, all others warned pulled here, been pushed, have come singly, have come off. 3. In enormous numbers, have visited occasionally, have visited periodically for hunting, trading, replenishing. Fort concluded that the human race does not have a very harems mining, have been unable to stay here, have high status in relation to Earth's extraterrestrial owners. In established colonies here, have been lost here, far addressing the puzzle of why don't they Earth's owners, advanced peoples or things and primitive peoples or ever come here or send here openly, he philosophized, whatever they were, white ones, black ones, yellow ones. 6. Would we, if we could, educate and sophisticate pigs, geese, cattle? To understand how all of this applies to the human con, would it be wise to establish diplomatic relation with Dishan today? Fort offered no answers, only a formula, the hen, that now functions, satisfied with mere sense of achievement by way of compensation? 4. Pigs, geese, and cattle. First find out that they are owned. In addition to likening the human race to self-satisfied, then find out the whyness of it. 7. Livestock. Fort believed that a direct influence over human affairs was being exerted by Earth's apparent owners. Fort had certainly expressed some daring ideas. They were published at a time when crude biplanes and dirigible, I suspect that after all, we're useful, that among balloons ruled the sky. Charles Lindbergh's historic flight contesting claimants, adjustment has occurred, or that across the Atlantic Ocean was still 8 years away. Something now has a legal right to us by force, or by Fort acquired a small and loyal following during his day. Having paid out analogues of beads for us to former, it was not until a third of a century later, however, that the more primitive owners of us, that all of this has been foundation laid by Fort, supported a sudden explosion of known, perhaps for ages, to certain ones upon this non-fiction works, speculating that an extraterrestrial society, Earth, a cult or order, members of which function like had been involved in human affairs. This sudden surge of 16. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 17. Interest was caused by a media-publicized rash of UFO, robes sent from heaven by the great god Jehovah, although sightings in the late 1940s and 1950s, one of the first the sciences have thankfully moved away from that kind of books of that period to discuss ancient UFO sightings, was perspective to a large extent, human-centered concepts of flying saucers on the attack by Harold T. Wilkins. It was existence are still surprisingly strong. Published in 1954 by Citadel Press of New York. Citadel. Some persuasive-sounding arguments have been followed with a host of books, including the UFO and the Vanced, to refute the evidence that one or more Extrater Bible, 1956, by Morris K. Jessup. Jessup's book suggested terrestrial societies have been visiting the Earth. Some of those that many biblical events were the doings of a space-age arguments are worth addressing. Race, not of a god. Numerous passages from the Bible were quoted to support the theory. Similar books with similar one. No intelligent life other than mankind has been proven titles followed, such as flying saucers in the Bible, 1963, to exist elsewhere in the universe. By Virginia F. Brasington and the Bible and Flying Saucers, at first glance, this seems to be true. However, One Need, 1967, by Barry H. Downing. Only look right here on Earth to find other intelligent life on the other side of the Atlantic, a number of European forms. Studies of dolphins and other large marine mammals writers were also making important contributions to have revealed a high intelligence in many of those creatures. Genre. The French writing team of Louis Pauwels and analyses of other mammals have uncovered in some of Jacques Bergier, wrote their intriguing bestseller, Morning of Them, a level of intelligence much higher than previously The Magicians, which was published in America in the early believed. This reveals that there are a great many intelligent 1960 Erich von Däniken of Switzerland was also writing and semi-intelligent creatures in the universe known to us. About ancient astronauts during the 1950s and 60s, and we share a planet with them. The fact that they all flourish achieved great fame by the early 70s after the publication together on this one small planet is an excellent indication of his first international bestseller on the subject. Chariots, that other intelligent creatures can exist elsewhere under of the gods. The powerful success of von Däniken's book Right Conditions prompted a flood of similar books and motion pictures in two. There has not been a single UFO sighting which could the 70s and early 80 AS, bringing the idea of ancient not be explained as a natural or human phenomenon. Their astronauts to the attention of millions. For all UFOs must be such phenomena. The notion of alien intervention in human affairs is this argument uses faulty logic. It is possible to explain. Early tolerated when it is expressed as a work of science, almost anything as anything. I suppose one could explain. Fiction, but it is often poorly received when suggested as the sun, as billions of fireflies held in a gigantic glass bowl. Fact. This is understandable. The very idea of it seems, this explanation, however, does not fit the evidence as at first blush to fly in the face of everything we have, well as the better theory that the sun is a huge mass of ever been taught. For centuries, there has been a strong, compressed hydrogen, which is undergoing a process of tendency to think of our planet and the human race in very atomic fusion. Isolationist terms. Centuries ago, people even believed that many UFO sightings are given prosaic explanations, only humans were at the center of the universe, and that by ignoring evidence which clearly reveals that they are not sun and stars, all revolved around us. It was a flattering earthly phenomena, if one is selective enough in choosing notion, but sadly not a true one. In the bygone days of which evidence and testimony to believe, one can invent the Inquisition, however, a person could be put to death almost any explanation to fit almost any UFO sighting for challenging the idea. The only extraterrestrials people, the trick is to find the best explanation to fit the true and were permitted to believe in were winged angels in white complete facts. In many instances, the true and complete. 18 William Bramley. The Gods of Eden. 19. Facts indicate that a UFO is indeed best explained as an admirable safety record makes air travel one of the safest natural phenomenon. In other cases, the best explanation modes of transportation today is that a UFO is probably an intelligently guided craft of, let us assume, that the reported alien spacecraft in our non-human origin. Many remarkable sightings do fit. This skies have precisely the same safety record as American latter category. Commercial jet aircraft, no better and no worse. Let us 3. There has been no hard evidence of UFOs or guess that 2,000 flying saucer flights are made over Earth. Ancient astronauts, every year. That amounts to 5.5 flights every day. We physical objects constitute hard evidence. In ufology, we'll assume that each hypothetical saucer flight is made a piece of hard evidence might be a crashed saucer, or at a low enough altitude that, if a mishap should occur, body of an extraterrestrial pilot. It is argued that if alien the debris would fall to Earth before disintegrating in the spacecraft have been flying in Earth's skies for thousands of atmosphere. Years, we should have a piece of concrete physical evidence putting all of the above figures together we discover by now. Setting aside allegations and evidence that a flying saucer would crash or drop a substantial governments may have a crashed saucer or two secreted chunk of debris only once every 5 centuries. That would away, we cannot logically expect to find too many alien amount to only 12 crashes since the dawn of mankind's artifacts. To explain why, I will make an analogy between first recorded civilization. If we cut the safety factor in half UFOs and modern commercial jetliners, and double the number of hypothetical UFO flights to 4,000. Millions of commercial airline flights take off from US per year, 11 per day, or leave the safety factor the same airports every year. Despite this enormous volume, vary and quadruple the number of low-level saucer flights to few people will ever stumble upon a crashed jetliner or 8,000 per year, 22 per day, that would still amount to only dead crew member because only a tiny percentage of all one crash or major piece of debris once every 100 flights end in disaster. Equally few individuals will ever 25 years. Find any instruments or debris tossed from jetliners because we can safely conclude that even if extraterrestrial craft jetliners are self-contained and the navigators rarely gouge have been flying in our skies for millennia, we cannot expect instruments from the flight panels and heave them out to find too much wreckage or debris, the best evidence of cockpit window. If it were not for the fact that most of extraterrestrial visitation that we may reasonably expect us can see commercial jet aircraft and fly in them, that to obtain is eyewitness testimony, which is precisely the hard evidence of their existence would be surprisingly evidence we have. Scant, especially if they were to be manufactured in, and despite these pessimistic statistics, a few rare UFO, flown only to and from remote areas, crashes have been reported, fragments alleged to have. Let us translate this into a mathematical formula. Come from exploding UFOs have been found and made based upon U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, public. One such piece was reported by a Brazilian statistics, roughly 1 in every million flights by major U.S. columnist who said that the item had been recovered carriers departing from American airports suffers a serious by a fisherman off the coast of Brazil in 1957. The accident, such as a crash landing away from a fragment, was sent by Omni magazine to the Massachusetts airport, or the loss of a significant piece of the plane. This Institute of Technology, MIT, for analysis. It proved to be a piece of pure magnesium. An MIT analyst guessed that the fragment might have been a piece of weld. Asterisk. For a good overview of UFO cases, I recommend the UFO Encyclometal from either an exploding aircraft or from a Repedia by Margaret Sachs. Entering satellite. Because the piece could have been 20. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 21. Manufactured on Earth, the test was considered incon. This is not to say that clear photos of apparently genuine inclusive alien aircraft do not exist. A few do, and they can be found for. If UFOs are extraterrestrial aircraft, there should be in various books written by responsible UFO researchers. An undisputed photograph of one by now. 5. Eyewitness testimony in UFO cases is inherently anything can be disputed. To begin a dispute, all one liable. Such testimony is therefore insufficient evidence of needs to do is open one's mouth and utter a few words. Extraterrestrial visitation. The mere existence of a dispute, therefore, does not in itself, perhaps the most influential UFO critic as of this writing, deny the reality of a thing. The dispute simply means that is Philip Klass, who has been aptly dubbed the Sherlock someone has chosen to quarrel, whether for good reasons, Holmes of ufology, for his exhaustive investigations. His or bad. Book, UFOs Explained, 1. The Aviation Space Writers. It is true, however, that researchers do face a paucity of award for the best book on space in 1974. In that award, decent UFO photographs. Available UFO Snapshots 10 winning book, Mr. Klass developed several principles. The to be of two varieties, either fuzzy and inconclusive, the first was, picture could be of just about anything, or fraudulent. When a sharp, clear picture of a flying saucer does surface, ufological principle #1, basically honest and intel, it often proves to be a hoax. This happens so often that ligent persons who are suddenly exposed to a brief, a researcher can almost count on a good flying saucer unexpected event, especially one that involves an unfor photograph eventually proving bad. This is especially true Millia object may be grossly inaccurate in trying to today, when technical advances have made some forms of describe precisely what they have seen. 8. Trick photography nearly undetectable. This still leaves the question, why are there so few con this principle is sometimes true? It was demonstrated by occlusive photographs available. U.S. government-sponsored UFO study conducted between, as noted earlier, apparently genuine extraterrestrial Air 1966 and 1968, under the direction of Edward U. Condon. Craft account for only a small percentage of the total number its published findings, which are usually called the Condon of UFOs reported. Most of those aircraft are seen at night. Report are a milestone in UFO literature. The majority of close encounters, human encounters with, in one chapter of the Condon Report, the committee, the spacecraft occupants, take place in rural non-recreational discusses what occurred after a Russian spacecraft, zoned areas where there are very few people carrying cameras. The IV went awry and began its re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, already poor chances of getting a good snapshot under those on March 3, 1968. As the craft fell through the atmosphere, conditions are worsened by the fact that the vast majority and burned, it created a spectacular display for people on of camera owners, including dedicated photo buffs, do not the ground. Eyewitnesses perceived the flaming debris as always carry their cameras with them. At any given moment, a majestic procession of fiery objects, leaving behind a surely fewer than one person in every 10,000, is carry golden orange tail. Because of the object's great height, being a camera, UFOs do not compensate for this by making it was impossible to make out from the ground what the regular scheduled appearances, overcrowded vacation spots, broken pieces actually were. It was only possible to see where most clicking cameras would be. Given these factors, we can expect that good, genuine photos of extraterrestrial aircraft would be exceedingly rare commodities. Remember. Asterisk. For advice concerning the authenticity of specific UFO photographs, I also that camera ownership has been widespread for only a recommend contacting the Mutual UFO Network Inc., MUFON, 103. Short period of time, several decades, Old Town Road, Seguin, Texas, 78155, 4099, USA. 22. WILLIAMBRAMLAU, The Gods of Eden. 23. Them as brilliant and separate points of light. The Zond eyewitnesses who did not know what the flying object's IV debris created an effect identical to that of a brilliant whir, with only minor deviations among them, all 14-meter display. Observers gave accurate descriptions of what it was possible upon compiling eyewitness testimony of the Zonda far for them to actually see. The committee concluded, entry, it was discovered that some people saw more than there really was. If some of the erroneous observations in summary, we have a number of reports that had been taken at face value, some people would have highly consistent with one another, and those differ concluded that the Zond IV debris was actually an ENSES that do occur are no greater than would be intelligently controlled alien spacecraft. For example, 5 expected from situational and perceptual differences. Eyewitnesses reported that the lights were part of a cigar. Many small discrepancies could be pointed out, SB-shaped or rocket-shaped craft, a common UFO description. Shyly with regard to estimates of distance and direct 3 eyewitnesses said that the object had windows, 1 tyon, but these are not great enough to affect the overall observer, claimed that the object had made a vertical impression of the event. 9. Descent. Because of these blatant errors, Mr. Class and others have understandably labeled all cigar-shaped UFOs. This demonstrates something very important that we can with bright windows as meteors. The Condon Committee Express in our own ufological principle cited the Zondein Fee testimony as an example of why basically honest and intelligent persons who are witness reports are often inadequate to establish that a UFO, suddenly exposed to a brief unexpected event, includes an extraterrestrial spacecraft. In one that involves an unfamiliar object, will, in the case closed, majority of cases, be accurate in trying to describe, not quite, precisely what they have seen. In his ufological principle #1 quoted above, Mr. Class states that eyewitnesses may be grossly inaccurate in trying. That is why eyewitness testimony may be admissible to describe precisely what they have seen. Significantly, he courts of law to convict or free a defendant even when did not say that eyewitnesses are usually inaccurate. This solid physical evidence is lacking. Eyewitness testimony is distinction takes on importance as we read further into the perfectly valid and useful form of evidence. Condon Report. 6. Sophisticated listening devices have been pointed. The Condon Committee discovered that at least half of Toward the Heavens to pick up extraterrestrial communica the Zondein V eyewitnesses gave accurate, unembellished tyons. So far, no such communications have been detected. Reports of the event. The observations of a cigar-shaped, this is further evidence that there is no intelligent life craft with windows, came only from a minority, from nearby. The accurate reports, a careful UFO researcher would have despite skepticism in many academic circles regarding being able to eliminate the erroneous descriptions and core extraterrestrial visitation, several well-funded attempts have correctly identified the Zond IV re-entry as debris or a meteoric being made to detect signals from outer space civilizations phenomenon. The committee also analyzed a wave of through the use of sophisticated radio antennas pointed UFO reports triggered by several college students who had Toward the Heavens. The fact that these efforts have reported released 4 hot air balloons into the evening sky. The LI not detected any intelligent signals is viewed as additional balloons were made of plastic dry cleaning bags, the hot proof that there are no alien civilizations nearby. Air was generated by birthday candles suspended under. The problem with drawing such a conclusion is that neath. The committee analyzed the testimony of 14 radio antennas have many limitations. They are only able, 24. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden, 25. To detect radio waves. There are many other bands along radar detection of UFOs is being further eliminated by the electromagnetic spectrum 4 that can carry communicate advances in technology. Many modern radar computers now tie-in signals such as microwave. What is to say that an automatically eliminate anomalous readings so that they are extraterrestrial society, if it exists, would necessarily use not even displayed on the radar screen. This makes an radio waves for communication. We do not even know operators' job easier, but at the cost of eliminating UFO, what lies beyond the 2 known ends of the electromagnetic detection. Mr. Class comments, Spectrum. How can we be sure that there are not wavelengths in one of the 2 uncharted regions which are far superior, ironically, one of the several criteria used by radar for communication to anything we have detected so far? Computers to discriminate between real and spurious. The reputed failure of radio antennas to pick up intelligent targets would filter out potential radar UFOs. Even signals would only tell us that no one within range is if they were legitimate extraterrestrial craft, flying at using the electromagnetic wavelengths detectable by those hypersonic speeds. 0.10. Antennas. 7. If so many flying saucers are visiting Earth, why 8? Many people have testified under hypnosis to being, are they not detected more often on radar, abducted by UFOs? Such testimony is inherently suspect. Many outstanding UFO sightings have been confirmed because people who have never been abducted can be on radar. This excellent radar evidence is usually dismissed, coached into creating seemingly realistic abduction, memo by critics as operator error, as radar malfunction, or as false rise while under hypnosis. Readings caused by natural phenomena. We would have, even if the UFO phenomenon consisted solely of occasional more radar evidence, if it were not for the fact that radar odd sights in the sky, it might be easy to dismiss. How operators are trained to disregard most radar anomalies ever, many people have reported being kidnapped by UFO, because any number of things can create a false read. Occupants. The abduction experiences tend to be remarkably spurious. Radar signals can be generated by such widely similar. The victim sees a UFO, usually at night, and often in disparate phenomena as flocks of birds and severe weather, a rural area. He is immobilized and taken aboard in alien conditions. Operators are taught to focus on those read spacecraft. He is given a physical examination, lasting an ings that pinpoint the type of objects they are tracking. Hour or 2 by alien creatures. He is then released, many usually human aircraft. If something unusual pops up on abductees do not consciously remember their experiences the screen and disappears, it will, more often than not, afterwards. A typical victim may only see a UFO and be ignored. A great many radar UFOs, therefore, go unre then suddenly discover that 2 hours have passed with ported. No recollection of what had occurred during the missing time. Researchers usually break through this amnesia with hypnosis. Asterisk, the electromagnetic spectrum is the range of wavelengths at which it appears that the curious amnesia experienced by so different forms of light may travel. At one end of the known spectrum, many UFO abductees is deliberately induced by the UFO, are radio waves which have long wavelengths. Yes, radio waves are occupants as a method of preserving the alien's anonymity, actually light waves. They become sound when translated by a receiver. At the other end of the spectrum are gamma rays, which have short. Such mental tampering can indeed be done during its infra wavelengths. The range of light we can see with our eyes is limited to mouse and highly publicized mind control experiments of a very small band of the spectrum. Instruments have been invented to the 1960s and 70s. The American CIA had developed pickup and transmit along other wavelengths such as infrared, X-ray, effective techniques to bury memory and induce amnesia. And microwave. With careful work, however, the buried memories could. 26. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 27. Be recovered. As we shall see later, mental tampering with highly charged subject of their abductions. For this and human victims has been a common activity associated with other reasons. I strongly recommend against the use of UFOs throughout all of history. Hypnosis. Heavily occluded memory can and should be, to date, an enormous body of fascinating abduction, testy recovered, while a subject is in a fully conscious state. Money has been gathered, aspersions have been cast upon it. Some UFO abduction experiences have been recovered in because of various experiments, such as those performed in just that fashion. 1977, at the Anaheim Memorial Hospital in California. It was 9. The mathematical odds of an extraterrestrial race discovered in Anaheim that individuals who allegedly had discovering Earth are too remote for it to be likely. Little prior knowledge of UFOs could be coached into create several mathematical formulae have been devised to seemingly realistic abduction memories, while under show how unlikely it is that Earth has been visited by hypnosis. This discovery has been used to cast doubt on the extraterrestrial society. Such formulae are usually based validity of all abduction testimony obtained under hypnosis. Upon theories of evolution, the number of planets which the Anaheim experiments, however, miss the point and might support life, and the distances between planets and reveal nothing about the UFO phenomenon. They only galaxies. Reaffirm what we already know about hypnosis. Such formulae are certainly interesting, but they should. It is true that a person's memory can be distorted while never be considered conclusive. If something exists, it exists. He is under hypnosis just as it can when a person is trying to make it go away with a math formula will not make completely conscious. On the other hand, it has been amply any less real, demonstrated that hypnosis can be effective in recovering. Keep in mind that we are unable to see any solid planet's completely valid memory. It depends upon the skill of the beyond our own solar system, let alone determine if there is hypnotist and the mental state of the subject. A hypnotist, any life on them. The human situation in this respect can coach a person who has never been aboard a train into likened to a colony of tiny ants whose range of observation creating a realistic memory of riding a train, but that may only encompass a few acres. If that colony is situated, mean that every hypnotic subject who remembers being on a barren desert, the ants might conclude that the entire train is guilty of fabrication. Of course not. Earth is a desolate wasteland, never dreaming of the vast. Admittedly, there are genuine problems with hypnosis. Metropolis only 100 miles away. Simply because the hypnotic subject is in a semi-conscious state, we find our own solar system or section of the galaxy, he or she may be more impressionable than normal. For this baron, it does not automatically follow that this is the case. Reason, American courts of law generally do not admit into everywhere. Another sector of the galaxy may be absolutely evidence testimony obtained under hypnosis. Another teeming with intelligent life, and there would be no way for GR with hypnosis, is that a subject may recover a completely US out here on the distant edge of the Milky Way to no valid memory. But if the subject is continuously pushed, except by guessing with theories that are ever-changing. For during hypnosis to remember more, he may find his mental this reason it is not particularly wise to disregard evidence. Time track getting scrambled. When that happens, he will have extraterrestrial visitation if it appears. Often start to remember additional episodes which did 10. Only people with mental problems believe in UFOs, not actually occur when or how remembered. Even so, the one unfortunate method some UFO critics use to attack original memory remains valid. Evidence of extraterrestrial visitation is with psychological. Sadly, some UFO abductees have been hypnotized and theory, because such a critic is absolutely certain that they're rehypnotized beyond all measure of reason. They cons have been no extraterrestrial aircraft in our skies. He may quaintly wind up with scrambled memories on the already resort to using defamatory psychological labels in an effort. 28. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 29. To explain why many people will consider a possibility money from UFO books or motion pictures are engaged in that the critic rejects. Such labels have run the gamut from similar chicanery, a simple need for religious fulfillment, to ambulatory schizo. Please keep in mind that money itself has nothing to do frenia. This dubious psychiatry has become regrettably with the validity of an idea. Money is an unpredictable fashionable in recent years. It hides the reality that most commodity which goes to the deserving and undeserving alike. Serious research into UFOs is as clinical and scientific as a handful of people have indeed earned good incomes from one could hope for. The majority of UFO researchers are as books and films dealing with the UFO phenomenon. The sane and rational as the critics who are so quick to bandy number of people who have done so, however, is very small about the unflattering psychological labels. The true UFO, compared to the many thousands of teachers, lecturers, and debate centers around genuine scientific, intellectual, and writers who are paid, sometimes handsomely, to promulgate historical issues, not emotional ones, more conventional views of the world. Another problem with using psychological analysis to even when it is clear that a few individuals have falsely explain popular and scientific interest in UFOs is that reported or insincerely discussed UFOs to make money, the tables can be turned. A scholar advocating the UFO phenomenon is not automatically discredited. Scibillity of extraterrestrial visitation can, as easily and as profit-making has been a motive in nearly all arenas of incorrectly, argue that those people who adamantly adhere human endeavor since the earliest days of mankind. If only to prosaic explanations for UFO sightings in the face we were to throw out everything to which someone has of contrary evidence, are deeply afraid of something they ever attached a profit motive, little would remain of our cannot understand. Between the distinguished sideburns of culture. Fortunately, the vast majority of UFO witnesses a PhD, one could argue, may be a frightened child, or in researchers, rich and poor, are sincere in what they willful adolescent, desperately trying to handle the often say and do, confusing world around him by forcing everything to con 12. UFO behavior does not conform to what we think form to what he can intellectually and emotionally intelligent extraterrestrial behavior ought to be prehend. UFOs are difficult to study due to their often bizarre, as we can see, psychological mudslinging is very poor and unpredictable natures. UFO behavior seems on the form in a scientific debate of this kind. It does no one any one hand to raise some of the most profound questions good, the labels are usually untrue, and it clouds the real about life and existence, while on the other hand, it seems issues. Intelligent and rational people are easily found on to be the stuff of a Buck Rogers movie. This duality is all sides of the UFO controversy. Difficult to reconcile, yet it is an inescapable part of the 11. UFO theories are money-making rackets designed to phenomenon. The UFO is both profound and kooky as we prey on the gullible. Shall see. It is a truism that there are two great crimes in our society. This factor is often used to discredit UFO reports. Some having money and not having money, both are punished critics, imply that if UFOs are extraterrestrial aircraft, they, with equal ferocity, would manifest themselves in a more acceptable manner. One of the easiest ways to discredit an idea is to suggest why, for example, have UFOs apparently kidnapped house that someone has gotten money for expressing it. Some UFO wives and implanted them with religious messages, but critics have made allusions to charlatans in the past who never landed on the White House lawn and spoken to the had duped people with strange ideas and who had become U.S. president. Rich by preying on other people's gullibility. Such illusions. In one of his books, Philip Klass offered a $10,000, have been made in an effort to suggest that people who earn reward for conclusive proof of extraterrestrial visitation, 2:30. William Bramley. The Gods of Eden, 31. Qualify for the reward only a crashed spacecraft or other. The problem with this tactic is that it does not always lead evidence which the U.S. National Academy of Sciences to truth and can even lead away from it. A good example announces to be an affirmation of extraterrestrial intel was the round Earth theory espoused by Christopher Huygens would suffice, or an extraterrestrial visitor must Columbus in the 15th century. In an age when many PEO appear before the United Nations General Assembly or on PLE still believed the world to be flat, Columbus was part of a national television program. The fact that no one has of a movement proclaiming that the earth was round or received the reward is viewed by some people as added pear-shaped. As correct as Columbus was on this issue, he proof that Earth is not being visited by an extraterrestrial was wrong about many others. Columbus thought that he, society, would encounter Asia when he crossed the Atlantic Ocean. The problems with the $10,000 reward are quickly obvious and falsely reported that he had done so when he returned. Oh yes. We have already discussed the poor odds of finding to Spain. We know today, of course, that Columbus had a crashed saucer or major piece of debris. What if the not found Asia at all he had stumbled upon the North National Academy of Sciences is prone to argue a terrestrial American continent which is nowhere near Asia? Because origin to a smaller piece of hard evidence before admitting of this, we could easily scoff at Columbus's phony evidence, a non-terrestrial source. What if extraterrestrial pilots are and proclaim his round Earth theory a sham? After all, no more inclined to appear on television or at the United, some of Columbus's other ideas about the Earth were clearly nations than a human pilot is disposed to address a council wrong, some absurdly so. Of chimpanzees. This type of situation occurs frequently, especially when we can all certainly wish that UFOs would be more as science is young, as ufology is today. False claims and cooperative, but until they are, the UFO phenomenon erroneous evidence are often used to support fundamentally be studied on its own terms, not according to the behavior sound ideas. This is not to say that every new theory that we think it ought to exhibit pops along is a valid one, or that bad evidence is the sign 13. In the past, a few UFO sightings touted as proof of a good theory. Many new theories prove bad. The trick of extraterrestrial visitation by top UFO researchers is to weigh all of the evidence and to base a decision on proven to be earthly phenomena or hoaxes. Such errors that, in doing so, however, do not be surprised to encounter should cast doubt on all proclamations by UFO research disagreement from others. It is a funny thing that two PUers, P can look at identical information and arrive at opposite, because the UFO phenomenon is so difficult to study. Conclusions. Even the finest researchers will inevitably make errors. 14. Expressing theories of extraterrestrial visitation, and sometimes many of them. It is easy for someone to seize of ancient astronauts is dangerous to society, those mistakes, and use them to discredit the entire subject. This argument is not worth dignifying in societies with. This tactic is often used by lawyers in courts of law, by traditions of open discussion and debate, freedom of express statesmen during political debates, and even by scientists. Scion is one of the bedrocks of a healthy culture. It allows that engaged in academic controversies, society and its people to grow. A wide diversity of ideas gives people more perspectives to choose from. Possessing such a choice is preferable to having intellectual options. Asterisk. Another problem with the $10,000 offer was that a person restricted. In an open society, many unconventional ideas had to pay Mr. Class $100 per year to qualify. This reduced the UFO. Come and go, but that is a small price to pay for the debate to the level of a crapshoot where it does not belong. Few serious, enormous benefits of leaving communication lines open. UFO researchers accepted the offer, much to their credit, and free. 32. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 33. 15. If there are so many UFOs, why have I never seen the beast which threw them? Competent researchers today, 1, are aware of these perils, and they try to avoid speculating. I have never seen a UFO either. I have also never seen too far from the known facts. India. But the circumstantial evidence of its existence tends. Why do I take the possibility of extraterrestrial visitation to make me think that India probably exists? Seriously, even though I agree with the natural explanation for some UFO sightings, still debated today, I do so for many. In addition to the above arguments, other means have reasons. Firstly, the UFO phenomenon has been used to discredit UFO sightings. One method utilizes and reported for centuries. I therefore reject the critics. Semantics. Some UFO critics say that they seek to find contention, that UFOs are merely a bit of modern folklore. Rational explanations for UFO sightings by rational. Secondly, the UFO phenomenon has been surprisingly they mean explanations that portray a sighting as a natural system from location to location and from era to era. For or man-made object. This is an unfortunate use of the example, some modern sightings of rocket or cigar-shaped word rational. The word rational means sane. Well, UFOs mirror a UFO report from 15th century Arabia. Thought out or logical. Because sanity and logic must, thirdly, although it is true that some dubious ancient astro ultimately be based upon truth, a rational explanation nullity evidence has been published, so has some truly out of a phenomenon would be that explanation which most standing evidence. The critics challenge that extraordinary closely approximates the truth, whatever the truth may be. Claims require extraordinary proof has, to my mind, been if a reported UFO is a misperceived natural phenomenon met by some of that evidence. Fourthly, the ancient astro then to explain it as such would indeed be rational. On Naut's theory is hardly the pseudo-scientific nonsense that, the other hand, if a UFO is not a natural or man-made, it is sometimes accused of being. The ancient astronauts. Phenomenon then to say that it is in the face of contrary theory is a surprisingly logical hypothesis, for shedding light evidence would not be rational at all on previously inexplicable historical data. I expect that having said all of this, I still understand the reluctance will one day be recognized as a true breakthrough, even of many people, to take the UFO phenomenon seriously, if it meets considerable opposition today. The fact that it is a difficult, booby-trapped subject. Some individuals, the theory arose from grassroots research, and not from who were once open-minded about UFOs have, had the ivied halls of a major university, means little. Any unfortunate experience of getting egg in their faces when one with an active and curious mind can make significant, they over-speculated about UFOs and were proven wrong. Discoveries. A good example was the public debacle surrounding at this stage of my discussion, I may disappoint some Martian moon, Phobos. About a decade ago, a number readers by stating that it is not my purpose to write yet of scientific opinion, leaders had speculated that Phobos, another tome which analyzes modern UFO sightings, or was an artificial satellite placed in orbit around Mars, by which parades forth an array of ancient astronauts, evidence extraterrestrials, when a space probe later flew close enough simply to prove visitation. That has been adequately done to photograph Phobos, the Martian moon was shown to be elsewhere. If you remain a UFO skeptic, I recommend that little more than a large, irregular piece of rock, although you study other UFO literature before continuing with this, some of its orbital characteristics remain puzzling. Book. The Gods of Eden is written for those people who who and astronomers, because they survive on their good, already take seriously the possibility that Earth has been reputations, cannot endure too many speculative blunders visited by an extraterrestrial society of that kind. Many people who suffer such a tumble do this book actually begins where Charles Fort left off. Not get back on the horse, instead they curse and attack. Mr. Fort speculated that Earth may be the property of an 34. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden, Extraterrestrial Society. He further believed that humans might be little more than slaves or livestock. As a result, 5. Of my own historical research launched from an entirely different starting point, I too arrived at a similar outrame, seem unscholarly and outrageous. Only by continuing Geas theory, to read onward, will the remarkable historical documentation human beings appear to be a slave race languishing on in support of those ideas truly take shape. An isolated planet in a small galaxy. As such, the human race, hang on to your hat. We will now begin a startling, was once a source of labor for an extraterrestrial civilization roller coaster ride along the underbelly of history, and still remains a possession today. To keep control over its possession and to maintain Earth as something of a prison, that other civilization has bred never-ending conflict between human beings, has promoted human spiritual decay, and has erected on Earth conditions of unremitting physical hardship. This situation has existed for thousands of years, and it continues today. Having now laid myself wide open to ridicule for expressing such a hypothesis, I will proceed to share with you a very different view of history than you have probably encountered before. Because I am risking a great deal by making this book available, I ask my readers for 2 favors before they pass judgment on what I have written. 1. Please read the entire book carefully. 2. Please read the chapters in the order in which they appear. No idea, fact, or historical episode I present stands entirely on its own. Each becomes significant only when it is seen within the entire context of history. The importance of what you read early in the book will not become apparent until you have continued to read much further. Conversely, the significance of the later material will not be clear unless you have read the early material first. The first 150 pages or so of this book contain ideas, conclusions, and statements that. Asterisk, I had not read any of Charles Fort's works until I had already completed the third draft of this book. The Gods of Eden. 37. Tamian region, Sumeria left records stating that human-like creatures of extraterrestrial origin had ruled early human society as Earth's first monarchs. Those alien people were often thought of as gods. Some Sumerian gods were said to travel into the skies and through the heavens in flying globes and rocket-like vehicles. Ancient carvings depict several gods wearing goggle-like apparel over their eyes. Human priests acted as mere intermediaries between the alien gods and the human population. Not all Mesopotamian gods were human-like extraterrestrials. Some were obvious fabrications and fictitious attrifaux. Buttes were often ascribed to the extraterrestrial human-like gods. Once the blatant fictions are stripped away, however, we discover within the Mesopotamian pantheon the gods of Eden. Distinct class of beings who do indeed fit the ancient astronauts' mold. In order for me to better discuss these high-tech gods, it will be necessary for me to invent a new term. The word God alone contains too much undeserved awe. Historical and modern-day testimony indicates that these gods are as human in their behavior as you or I. The term ancient astronaut pigeonholes them into the distant past, when in fact they appear to have maintained a continuous presence all the way up until today. The idea that human beings are a slave race owned the label extraterrestrial is too broad. By an extraterrestrial society is not a new one. It was, I cannot name the gods after any star or planet, from expressed thousands of years ago in mankind's earliest, which they might hail because I will not speculate as to recorded civilizations. The first of those civilizations was their place of origin. Furthermore, it is conceivable that Sumeria, a remarkably advanced society which arose in the alleged ownership of Earth, may have changed hands, Tigris-Euphrates River Valley, between 5000 and 4000 BC, over the millennia, in the same way that ownership of and flourished as a major civilization by 3500 BC *-like corporation, can pass among different owners without the other ancient societies which arose in the Mesopo public being aware of it. Until recently, ancient Sumeria was thought to be the site of mankind's. For a detailed analysis of the apparent high-tech nature of many ancient earliest city. Excavation has revealed a city in Jericho, near modern Sumerian gods. I recommend Zechariah Sitchin's 5 books, The 12th Day Jerusalem, built as long ago as 7000 BC. Almost nothing is known. Planet, the stairway to heaven, the wars of gods and men, the lost about that city. Realms and Genesis visited. They are published by Avon Books of New York. 36. 38 WILLIAM BRAMLEY, The Gods of Eden. 39. That leaves me to invent a new label based upon the When the Gods Like Men. God's apparent relationship to the human race. For lack bore the work and suffered the toil. Of anything better, I will simply refer to them as the toil of the gods was great. Custodial society, meaning that specific extraterrestrial, the work was heavy, the distress was muck. Society, or succession of societies, which appears to have had ownership and custody of the earth since prehistory. The tablets describe lives of endless drudgery as for brevity, I will often refer to them simply as custo. Gods carried out building, excavation, and mining opradions. Tyons on Earth. The gods were not at all happy with what sort of creatures are these newly labelled custo their lot. They were prone to complaining, backstabbing Dians, and rebellion against their leaders. A solution was needed. Historical records and modern testimony described them, and it was found. To create a new creature capable of as physically human-like, racially diverse, and most imper performing the same labors on Earth as the custodians. Tantly, very similar to human beings behaviorally. For with this purpose in mind, the custodial gods created example. Some modern-era UFOs have exhibited adults Homo sapiens, man. Sent prankishness by racing at airplanes as though they Mesopotamian tablets tell a creation story in which A were going to collide, and then abruptly veering away. God is put to death by other gods, and the body and just as impact seemed imminent. An apparent game of blood are then mixed into clay. Out of this concoction, aerial chicken. At least one modern witness has alleged human being is made. The new Earth creature is very aidly been zapped by a UFO for no other apparent reason similar in appearance to its custodial creators than malice. Ancient writers described their extraterrestrial in his book The 12th Planet, author Zecharia Sitchin. Gods as being capable of love, hate, amusement, anger, exhaustively analyzes the Sumerian creation stories, honesty and depravity. Ancient records and modern text concludes that the tale of a god's body being mixed with timony alike would indicate that custodial personalities' clay may have referred to biological engineering. Mr. run the entire gamut from saints to sinners, from the Sitchin supports his surprising conclusion by pointing to most degraded of despots to the most true-hearted of those Sumerian tablets which state that the first humans were humanitarians. Sadly, it is the brutal and despotic element bred in the wombs of female custodial gods. According to of their society that would appear to be the most influ in the tablets, custodians had male and female bodies, and they tile in the affairs of earth, as we shall document. Bred by sexual intercourse. In fact, the ancient Mesopotamian civilizations recorded a great stated that they provided ruling custodial gods with human deal of their history on clay tablets, only a fraction of those prostitutes. Mr. Sitchin believes that the clay was a special tablets have survived, yet they managed to tell a remarkable substance that could be inserted into a custodial womb. That story about the custodial gods and their relationship to substance held the genetically engineered cells of the new Homo sapiens, slave creature Homo sapiens. Humans could apparently, according to the history inscribed on Mesopotamian tab, be bred in that fashion because they were physically very let's. There was a time when human beings did not exist as similar to custodians. Interestingly, modern scientists have all. Instead, Earth was inhabited by members of the custo-bred animals in a similar fashion, such as a zebra in the Dial civilization. Custodial life on Earth was not pleasant. Womb of a horse. However, custodial efforts to exploit the rich mineral and ancient Mesopotamian tablets credit one god in par natural resources of Earth proved backbreaking. As one titular with supervising the genetic manufacture of Homo tablet tells us, sapiens, that God's name was Ea. Ea was reported to be 40WW Ilya M. Bur Emilia, the gods of Eden. 41. The son of a custodial king who was said to rule emerged, including that subspecies to which all human another planet within the far-flung custodial empire. Beings belong today, Homo sapiens sapiens. Homo sapiens, Prince Ea, was known by the title Enki, which sapiens appeared a mere 30,000 years ago. Some say only means Lord or Prince of Earth. ancient Sumerian 10,000 to 20,000 years ago. This raises an important quest. Texts reveal that Ea's title was not entirely accurate. Tie-in. Were the Sumerians referring to Homo sapiens or Homo because Ea was said to have lost his dominion over sapiens sapiens in their creation stories? There seems to be major portions of Earth to his half-brother, Enlil. No firm answer. Excellent arguments have been made that during one of the innumerable rivalries and intrigues, they were referring to original Homo sapiens. I tend to favor that seem to forever preoccupy custodial rulers, and the argument that they were probably referring to modern, in addition to engineering Homo sapiens, Prince Ea Homo sapiens sapiens, for the following reasons, is given credit in Mesopotamian tablets for many other accomplishments. If he was a real person, then Ea could won. The oldest surviving creation stories were written circa best be described as a scientist and civil engineer of 4,000, 5,000 BC. It is more likely that a true record, considerable talent. He is said to have drained marshes of mankind's creation, would survive 5,000 to 25,000 by the Persian Gulf, and to have replaced them with years, then it would survive 295,000 years or more. Fertile agricultural land. He supervised the construction, too, if the Sumerians were describing the creation of Homo of dams and dikes. Ea loved sailing, and he built Sapiens sapiens, later events described in Mesopotamian ships in which to navigate the seas. When it came, Ean tablets fall within a more plausible time frame. Time to create Homo sapiens, Ea demonstrated a good 3. The Mesopotamians themselves were members of the grasp of genetic engineering, but not according to the subspecies Homo sapiens sapiens. They were primarily tablets without trial and error. Most importantly, Ea, concerned with how they themselves had come into, was described as good-hearted, at least in regard to his existence. In their various works, ancient Sumerians' creation, Homo sapiens, Mesopotamian texts portray Ea depicted hairy animal-like men who appear to be as an advocate who spoke before custodial councils on more primitive subspecies of Homo sapiens, the behalf of the New Earth race. He opposed many of the Sumerians, clearly viewed those primitive men as in cruelties that other custodial rulers, including his half-entirely different race of creature, brother Enlil, inflicted upon human beings. It would appear from Sumerian tablets that Ea did not intend, if the Mesopotamian creation stories are based upon Homo sapiens, to be harshly treated, but his wishes in actual events, and if those stories refer to the creation of that regard, were overruled by other custodial leaders. Homo sapiens sapiens, we would expect Homo sapiens, as we have just seen, our ancient and highly civilized sapiens, to appear very suddenly in history. Remarkably, ancestors told a very different story of humanity's that is precisely what happened, the anthropological recgents on Earth, than we tell today. The Mesopotamians' Ord reveals that Homo sapiens sapiens appeared on Earth were clearly not schooled in Darwinian theories of evolve abruptly, not gradually. F. Clark Howell and T.D. White of Tyon. Nevertheless, there is some surprising anthropological. The University of California at Berkeley had this to say, evidence to support the Sumerian version of prehistory. According to modern-day analyses of the fossil record, these people, Homo sapiens sapiens, and their initial Homo sapiens emerged as a distinct animal species. Some material culture appear with seeming suddenness, just where between 300,000 BC and 700,000 BC, as time over 30,000 years ago, probably earlier in Eastern, than progressed a number of subspecies of Homo sapiens in Western Europe. 2. 42. William Bramley. The Gods of Eden. The mystery of this abrupt appearance is deepened by 4. Another puzzle, why did the more primitive Neanderthal 3? Man, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, suddenly vanish, and you have slaughtered a god together. The same time that modern Homo sapiens sapiens appeared? With his personality, spiritual being, evolution is not that fast. Messrs. Howell and White Pond have removed your heavy work, dared this question, and concluded, have imposed your toil on man. 5. The utter, almost abrupt disappearance of Nean custodial rulers knew that they needed to keep spiritual Dirthal people remains one of the enigmas and critical beings permanently attached to human bodies in order to problems in studies of human evolution. 3. Animate those bodies and make them intelligent enough to perform their labors. The Encyclopedia Britannica concurs. In the clay god, a spiritual entity, and man, the factors responsible for the disappearance of the physical body of Homo sapiens shall be bound. Neanderthal peoples are an important problem to which to a unity brought together. There is unfortunately still no clear solution. 4. So that to the end of days, the flesh and the soul, the Sumerian creation stories do offer a clear solution which in a god have ripened to the riddle, but it is one that many people would have that soul in a blood kinship be bound. 6. A difficult time accepting the sudden appearance of Homo sapiens sapiens, accompanied by the abrupt disappearance, the tablets are silent, about which personalities were of Neanderthal man, was caused by intelligent intervention, chosen to animate the new slave bodies. Based upon how it might be conjectured that Neanderthal man was either things are done in human society, we might guess that, exterminated or hauled off the earth to make room for the custodial society used criminals, deviates, prisoners, the new slave race, and perhaps to prevent breeding of war, detested social and racial groups, non-conform between the two subspecies. Whatever the precise truthists and other undesirables to obtain the spiritual beings of this might be, we do know 2 facts with certainty. It needed to animate the new slave race of Earth. Modern anthropology has discovered a sudden replacement humans were certainly treated like convicts sentenced to of Neanderthal man with modern man and Mesopotamian hard labor. Records state that intelligent planning by an extraterrestrial race lay somewhere behind that dramatic event. In Chapter 2, we discuss the fact that humans appear with picks and spades, they human beings, built to be spiritual beings, animating physical bodies. The spirit shrines seems to be the true source of awareness, personality. They built the big canal banks. And intelligence. Without a spiritual entity to animate it, for food for the peoples, a human body would be little more than a reactive animal, sustenance of the gods, 7, or dead. The people of ancient Mesopotamia thoroughly understood this critical fact when they mentioned a spiritual as beasts of burden. Humans were brutally treated by their being in connection with the creation of Homo sapiens, extraterrestrial masters. The clay tablets tell of vast and catastrophic cruelty perpetrated by the custodians against their human servants. Cold-blooded population control measures were carried out frequently. 44. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 45. 1200 years had not yet passed. An Assyrian tablet adds, when the land extended and the peoples multiplied. The land was bellowing like a bull. Command that there be a plague. Let the god got disturbed with their uproar. Namtar diminish their noise. Let disease, Enlil, half-brother and rival of herd their sickness, plague and pestilence, blow upon noise asterisk, them like a tornado. They commanded, and addressed the great gods, the noise of mankind there was plague Namtar diminished there has become too intense for noise, disease, sickness, plague, and pestilence. blew upon them like a tornado. 9. With their uproar, I am deprived of sleep. Cut off supplies for the peoples. Let there be a scarcity of plant life to the tablets describe ghastly conditions in which foods satisfy there. Supplies were cut off in which diseases were laid upon the hunger. People that constricted wombs and prevented childbirth and added another custodian should withhold his reign, and in which starvation became so rampant that human beings below the flood, the regular flooding of the, were forced to resort to cannibalism. Lesser diseases, such land which made it fertile, should not come up from as one resembling influenza, were also visited upon Homo, the abyss. Sapiens, suggesting that the custodial gods understood, let the wind blow and parch the ground, let the clouds, and engaged in biological warfare. Thicken, but not release a downpour, let the fields. When this genocide did not produce a sufficient drop in diminish their yields, the human population, the custodians resumed it. Eventually, a decision was made to destroy the human race entirely. There must be no rejoicing among them. Asterisk, with a great flood. Many archaeologists today believe that there was a cataclysmic flood in the Near East thousands of years ago. One description of the Great Flood is found in the Babylonian. Asterisk. These lines suggest that Enlil had lived more than 1,200 years. A. Epic of Gilgamesh, which predates the Bible. Similar longevity is attributed to Ea and other custodial rulers. Many, according to the epic, a Babylonian named Utnapishtim people, find it difficult to believe that any creature, including an extraterrestrial, could live that long. Was approached by Prince Ea, who opposed the decision. The surprising longevity attributed to custodial rulers may perhaps to destroy his creation, Homo sapiens. Ea told Utnapishtim be explained by Sumerian spiritual beliefs. The Sumerians believed that the other gods planned to cause a deluge to wipe out that a personality, spiritual being, survives the death of a physical, the human race. Ea, who is described in other writings as a body, and that it is possible to identify the personality after it has master shipbuilder and sailor, gave Utnapishtim instructions, abandoned one body and taken on a new one, in the same way that on how to build a boat which could survive the flood. One can identify a driver who jumps out of one automobile and climbs into another. A personality could therefore hold the same Utnapishtim, followed Ea's directions, and, with the help, political or social position, body after body, as long as the personality of friends completed the vessel before the flooding began, could be identified. When Sumerians gave custodians an extensive Utnapishtim, then loaded the boat with his gold family longevity, they were not necessarily suggesting that a single custodial and livestock, along with craftsmen and wild animals, and body survived for centuries. In many cases, they appear to have been hoisted off to sea. Saying that a custodial personality held a political position for a very Babylonian and Assyrian tablets relate that just prior to long time, even though it may have done so through a succession of bodies. 46. William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. 47. Flooding the land, the custodians scorched it with flame. Abundant paradise known as the Garden of Eden. Modern. Then they flooded the region by causing a long rainstorm. Versions of the Bible place the Garden of Eden in the and by breaking the intricate system of dams and dikes that Tigris-Euphrates region of Mesopotamia had been built in Mesopotamia to control the erratic flooding. The Old Testament tells us that Adam, first man, was of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Designed to be a servant, his function was to till the soil. The Gilgamesh epic relates that Utnapishtim and his, and to care for the lush gardens and crops owned by his crew, survived the ordeal. When it was over, they sought God. As long as Adam and Eve accepted their survey-out dry land by releasing a series of 3 birds. If a bird earned status and obeyed their ever-present masters, all of did not return to the boat, Utnapishtim would know that their physical needs would be met, and they had found dry land nearby on which to alight, permitted to remain in their paradise indefinitely. There, once back on solid ground, Utnapishtim was, however, one unpardonable sin, that they must never several custodians returning from out of the sky. Instead of commit, they must never attempt to seek certain types, destroying the survivors. A degree of leniency prevailed, and of knowledge. Those forbidden forms of knowledge are the custodians transported the surviving humans to another symbolized in the story as 2 trees, the tree of no region to live, edge of good and evil, and the tree of life. The tale of Utnapishtim should ring a bell with anyone. Tree symbolizes an understanding of ethics and justice, who is familiar with the biblical story of Noah and the Ark. The second tree symbolizes the